kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind, like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind, like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama, like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply STOP to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her?
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge?
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! It's now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend?
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
This is you over 30 years ago.
Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
And this is your mom when you drive her back from therapy.
Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
Roles change without us noticing, and in your new role, we help you help. AARP gives you the information to help care for your mom so that you can have patience with her, just like she did with you. Visit aarp.org/caregiving or call 1-877-333-5885 to get practical health and wellness tips to provide even better care for your loved one.
Are we there yet?
Remember, visit aarp.org/caregiving. AARP. We help you help. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
When I was little, I didn't talk for a long time. I liked things to always be the same. Anything new or different would scare and upset me. I was very sensitive to lights and sounds. It was almost like I had bigger eyes and ears than everyone else. So I built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. I didn't like looking people in the eye. It made me feel uncomfortable. I'd throw big tantrums over little things like when my socks didn't match. Sometimes I'd do the same things over and over. Until one day, I found out I had autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I learned how to live with it better.
You can see signs of autism in children as young as 18 months. Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
It's Thursday night, and you're grabbing drinks with some friends. Started off with a pitcher for the table, which quickly becomes 2. There's pool. And there's the photo booth.
All right, everybody squeeze in. Say cheese!
Followed naturally by an order of wings. And another.
Can we get some extra ranch sauce?
Then there's the ceremonial nightcap.
So what are we doing this weekend?
And lastly, it's back to the car, which, if you're buzzed, could be the most expensive night of your life. Getting pulled over for buzzed driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzzed driving, because buzzed driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You're tuned into DC's DFS Challenge with Dan Mader and Chris Pinto. Live on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Hey, yo, and welcome back into the DC's DFS Challenge Show, the last edition of the show, as we will be cutting off until September after this. But before we do, we got the DraftKings lineup cards, the NBA bets for you guys, and Chaz Filardi coming on in the second half of the show. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mader, joined here with Chris Dowhauer to talk about our DraftKings lineup today. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Can't believe it's our last week for basketball.
It is indeed. Of course, it's not the last week of the NBA playoffs, but it is going to be the last week because this will be the last giveaway, the last DC's DFS Challenge tournament for you guys to join and have potential to win a championship football souvenir from Mr. Chaz Filardi. Definitely worth the time, especially since it's a free tournament that you, of course, can click on the links in the comments. No matter where you're watching this or listening to this right now on social media at Belly Up Fantasy or at WWSRN for the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. This tournament is actually going to encompass Sunday and Monday, so we won't have a winner until Tuesday because we're going to have the two games, of course, back-to-back nights coming up. So that gives us a little more options than we normally would have. It was just on a Sunday, so that's the good news there. Before we break down our lineup cards, though, we got to give a big shout out to our sponsor of the day, which is Manscaped. And summer is here, but are you ready to unveil your beach bod? You're in luck. Our friends at Manscaped just launched their 4th generation performance package, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Complement your dad bod or six-pack with a trim from the leaders in male grooming. The sun is shining and calling your name, fellas. So join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for hot guy summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BellyUpFantasy. Go ahead and check that out now because there's no time to waste for the beach. It's hot and we can all get tan together. Chris, you've been enjoying the NBA playoffs so far? Have you been enjoying the conference finals so far on both the East and the West?
Yeah, I think for the most part. I mean, like I said, I've been just a little bit disappointed of the teams that are remaining. I'm not a big fan of any of the remaining teams necessarily, but it has been really good basketball. It's been kind of exciting to see teams go back and forth in a sense. The Clippers seem to do whatever they're not supposed to do. They win when they're not supposed to win. They lose when they're supposed to win. So, they kind of been keeping it interesting. And then Milwaukee just blew the crap out of Atlanta the other day. So that was pretty eye-opening. We've been picking against Atlanta almost every series so far, and finally, Atlanta's kind of basically keeps advancing somehow, some way.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Milwaukee figures something out with Atlanta the other day. Of course, though, there was times where I felt like the Sixers figured something out, and Atlanta was able to rebound as well. So it's going to be interesting, like you said, the back and forth. It seems like both these teams are able to go toe-to-toe with each other. It doesn't seem necessarily the games themselves are always that close, although the first Milwaukee-Atlanta game was pretty close. But it seems like
game was
the
pretty
series
close
will be close. The Suns game was pretty close the other night, too. But for the most part, it seems like the series are close, but the game's not always necessarily the same way.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, the only games I've been pretty excited. I mean, the Clippers had some nail biters there. The Eaton alley-oop, but then before the game went off, and then the other night when the Clippers
that was
did
the
win,
highlight of all highlights, was it not?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And then the Clippers, the other night they didn't necessarily blow out the Suns. The Suns basically just couldn't hit the broadside of the bar with Chris Paul back.
Yeah, and Chris Paul looked maybe a little rusty, but I expect that will wear off. That'll wear off. Yeah, I know. I saw all the memes like Chris Paul's playing like Cliff Paul actually out there, but I suspect he'll be able to get together going into the next game. We'll see. But you good?
Because hopefully Booker does too with the mask, and he kind of said it wasn't the mask that kind of threw a shot off, but he didn't look the same either.
No, neither one of them did. I expect a big rebound from both of them. I still expect the Suns to win that series at the end of the day, but it will be interesting to see if they can get both back on track. And if that mask is going to continue affecting Devin Booker to a significant level, because he could say it's not the mask or not. The only thing that's different about him is that mask. So I would definitely say it's affected him at least to some degree. We'll see if he's able to make an adjustment in the next game. So going into the DC's DFS Challenge tournament, what is your lineup?
So I started off with Reggie Jackson at the point guard position. Jackson's been pretty much the other primary scorer without Kawhi Leonard being, injured. He'll continue to be out from the game 4. We don't know if Kawhi's coming back at all for this series. But in the meantime, Reggie Jackson's been kind of their second scoring punch to Paul George. He gets some assists here or there, but primarily I'm going to add him to my lineup because he's pretty cheap at $6,100, and he's able to knock down baskets and knock down some shots for the Clippers, like I said. Coming off some decent DFS games back to back, so I'm riding. I'm sorry, $6,600, I should say, but still a good value, I think, for the point guard position.
Yeah, I also have Reggie Jackson in my lineup. I have my 2-guard spot instead of the point guard, but for the same reasons you just pointed out, the minutes, of course, have been there, especially with no Kawhi. His floor has essentially been 34 fantasy points, and he's been on a roll ever since Utah, frankly. He had 54, 39, 36, 33. He is a value at $6,600. You don't have to necessarily pay top dollar, but you are going to get a very good fantasy performance out of this guy, just out of necessity, if nothing else.
Yeah, maybe Booker should borrow his goggles or his glasses or sunglasses he wears, because since Reggie Jackson's been wearing those glasses, he's been unstoppable this year.
So this is what I can do when I can see the floor.
So at my 2-guard position, I roll with Paul George. Paul George, like I said, has basically been the alpha in the Clippers with Kawhi out. He's been putting up great numbers. He scores, he rebounds, he has the ball in his hands a lot more. So I'm riding with Paul George. I'm hoping for another big game out of him. The Clippers kind of go as Paul George goes, and even if he shoots not so great, he definitely fills up the stat sheet overall.
It's hard to argue with Paul George. You never know what kind of Paul George you're going to get necessarily from these playoff games, and that kind of dictates whether or not the Clippers win. But from a fantasy standpoint, he's pretty much as solid as all the superstars come from the floor to ceiling ratio, just because, again, he's the focal point. If the Clippers win, if the Clippers do anything, it has to flow through Paul George against the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, and I mean, he hasn't, talk about a good floor, he hasn't scored below 41 points in the DFS over, for I think, the past 2 or 3 weeks now. He's been averaging about 50 to 60 points DFS-wise, so I'm going to ride Paul George as much as I can in this lineup. At my small forward, at my small forward position, I'm going with Cam Johnson to save a little bit of money for my lineup. Johnson's been getting some solid production. He's putting up similar numbers to Crowder, similar numbers to Bridges, and similar numbers to Batum and more. So when I look at the value, I feel like he's a guy that has a little cheaper than some of those players I just mentioned, but also putting up similar numbers. So why not ride the guy who's going to, for the cheaper value, putting them the same thing?
I, too, have Cameron Johnson at my small forward position. $4,200, to your point, is a value there because he's been getting actually more minutes, had 24 minutes both first 2 games and 30 minutes in this past game. And he has about a range of about 20 or so plus fantasy points. So I have $4,200 to be able to pay down somewhere to get solid enough value to be able to pay up otherwhere. Cameron Johnson is a guy who's a nice little plug and piece play to be able to fill out the rest of your lineup at a pretty good level.
Yeah, and that guy who's been knocking down the shot as of late. So in the last couple of games, he's been basically open. He's been hitting it. So as a guy like Best kind of struggling shooting the ball right now, Cam Johnson has not been. So I'm going to ride the guy kind of hot.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a nice little value play there.
At the power forward position, I'm going my superstar Giannis. Giannis didn't get as many minutes as I would have hoped because they blew out in Atlanta. We'll see how close this game is. But I feel like right now Atlanta's Swiss cheese in the middle. Nobody can stick him when he wants to attack the basket. He's going to fill it up, with rebounds and scoring. So Giannis, to me, is the guy that you definitely want to ride if you can get in your lineup and you can afford to do so. He's the superstar player. He's the guy that kind of makes Milwaukee go. And like I said, I think he's a mismatch waiting to happen for Atlanta. They have nobody can really stick him right now.
Yeah, the key is being able to afford to put him in your lineup and getting other guys around. That's why guys like Cameron Johnson are so important. And yeah, Giannis is all he has to do is to stay aggressive. I mean, he has these games sometimes where he decides that he doesn't want to be aggressive that day. I don't know why that happens, what the mindset is, but that's the only, as long as Giannis is aggressive, there is nobody on Atlanta who can truly stop him.
No, and he's the guy that I trust the most in Milwaukee's lineup right now. I mean, Middleton's all over the place. Holiday had a crappy game 1, but it was great in game 2, so you're really not really sure what you're going to get. Giannis is going to, as long as he's in the lineup, he's going to score, he's going to be productive, he's going to rebound. So you have a guy that is basically money in the bank.
Absolutely.
At the center position, I'm going Zubac. Zubac's been having a really nice little run here the last 2 games especially. I'm a little nervous because I feel like every time I figure out, I think I know Ty Lue's rotation, he screws me. So I'm hoping Zubac doesn't get like 5 minutes all of a sudden this game because that seems to be Ty Lue just changes his line just because, and minutes just because. But I am right now. This guy shouldn't be on the bench. He has been averaging a double-double since he's been in the starting lineup. He has actually been outplaying DeAndre Ayton in a lot of ways. And I think with Morris still banged up, the minutes should be there and the production should still be there.
Yeah, he's been able to make an impact when he is on the floor. To your point, yeah, Tyronn Lue, if he wants to play small ball, suddenly Zubac's not going to be in there, and it's a matter of, it doesn't even seem like it's necessarily game flow. It's just whatever he decided to do before tip-off that day. So that's the only kind of Jekyll and Hyde thing you kind of have to deal with. But Zubac's also a value there at the center position, too, and a guy that is going to make an impact as long as he's on the floor. And you'd have to think after the last game, they would stick with having him there as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, when you look at the lineup, they played Boogie a lot that first game, and Cousins was pretty productive, and then played decent amount of minutes. The second game didn't play at all last game, so you really never know with Ty Lue when it comes to the bigs. But Zubac is coming off a 15 and 16 game, 15.16 rebounds, and a 14 and 11 game. So I mean, you can't not play him at the value, in my opinion.
I can't disagree with that there.
At the guard position, I'm going with Terrence Mann. More of a gut feel. I think that Terrence Mann returned to the starting lineup after last week. Now, once again, Ty Lue's lineup, it could be different tomorrow. Who knows? But they were productive playing with Mann. I expect Mann to have a decent game. I don't think he's ever going to have that 39-point game we had in last series. But I do think that when it comes to a guy who could actually knock down shots, get some steals, get some different things, add up on the stat sheet for you, he's a good play. I like his defensive play. I like his ability to kind of, create. So I think he's got an opportunity to have a decent game, a decent floor. I'm hoping for more upside than we got in the last couple of games, but I think 16 to 25 DFS points is something you're kind of looking at for the value.
Yeah, he's somebody that I contemplate putting in my lineup as well. I ultimately decided not to do it. No, he's kind of fallen back down to earth after that huge game that he had a week ago, I believe, at this point. But there is a value play to go with. Again, it's considering where your price range is to the points that you're expecting. In his case, refresh my memory, I believe he's about 3,200 or something like that.
He's 4,600.
4,600, excuse me.
But when you look at the other values of the guys that basically aren't in a rotation, so you kind of have you pick your poison. You could ride with a Patrick Beverly, you could ride with a Rondo, but Patrick Beverly hasn't really done anything this series. He was decent the last game, the Utah series, but other than that, he hasn't really been productive in the playoffs. And Rondo, once again, is a guy who could play a lot or could play not at all with Ty Lue's rotation. At least I know Mann's going to even come off the bench, or he should be starting again tomorrow. He's going to get at least a decent amount of minutes, and it can get you about double figures in points. So at the value, there's not a whole lot of other options at the guard position.
Yeah, to your point, that I was going to bring up is that the minutes for him are pretty consistent, where he's going to be on the floor for a significant amount. So at the price range, you're good to go there.
Then on my other four position, I'm going Dino Gallinari. Gallo's kind of been all over the place in his playoffs, but when he gets hot, he's hot. He can rebound the ball for you as well. He can knock some down some threes. I'm riding him a lot because I think that Bogdanovic continues to be banged up and not really being productive for the Atlanta Hawks. They need a second scorer to kind of step up with Trae Young. You kind of see the big men kind of struggling in the series a little bit more. Collins hasn't been as dominant, especially last game, as he has been in other games. And Capella has basically disappeared in a lot of ways, especially offensively. So I'm going with Gallo because I think they have to have somebody else step up for Trae Young to score. And to me, he's one of the guys as a baller in the playoffs. Like I said, he can do a little bit of everything. Hope to have a big game from him. I think he can get you possibly a double-double, but I'm guaranteeing that he at least gets you double-figure points.
Yeah, I feel like you can kind of take your shot with any of the Atlanta forwards, essentially, because they all have that ceiling that they could all get hot at any given moment. So you kind of like a roulette table. You're placing your chip on the one particular number and hoping that one comes up because they all kind of have a similar ceiling to floor ratio.
Yeah, and I think that you're going to see him play a little bit more four. I like Kevin Huerter a little bit in the lineup as well, but I think Kevin Huerter sees a lot too much little Holiday for my liking, so I kind of like the matchup for Gallo a little bit better, especially when he's coming off the bench.
I like it.
All right, so then finally at my utility position, I got Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis had a nice little game last game that he played. $3,600. Need to kind of balance my lineup from some kind of way with all the stars I have in my lineup. But I also think Bobby Portis is a guy that gets you a quiet double-double in a lot of ways. Talk about Gallo, a guy who can knock down the three, also can rebound. If Giannis isn't 100% healthy, as they're talking about him having some kind of tightness or whatever it is, or the game's a blowout, Bobby Portis is going to be able to have even more productive. But he usually gets his about 15 to 20 minutes, and when he comes out gunning. A lot of Marcus Morris does in a lot of ways, So he reminds me of him. And with Marcus Burris banged up as he is, you can't really ride him. I think Bobby Portis is kind of the guy coming off the bench for Milwaukee and being their scorer.
Yeah, I mean, he's that type of guy who can come in. He might only play 20 minutes, but in that 20 minutes, he can get you 8 to 10 boards and a few buckets from the outside. So that's a good little value play there, especially coming off of a more confident building type of game in the last one.
Yeah, and I think that he had 17, I think, last game, and he would have played more if they weren't such a blowout, because he was very productive until the fourth quarter when they just played all their bench guys. And then the game before, he had 22 and a half. So I think you have a guy who's got basically a 20-point DFS floor. And like I said, if there's any kind of foul trouble with Brook Lopez or anything happens to Giannis, you have the insurance, in my opinion, for the lineup. And I love Portis' upside with his ability to hit the threes and rebound.
Agreed there. Okay, I like it. Now, in my lineup, before we get into it, I'm going to call this lineup the bounce back lineup, and you're going to see why in a minute. Leading it off with Chris Paul at $8,700. First and foremost, he had an awful game. Still had 43 fantasy points in the last game, even having an awful game. I suspect he'll be a little bit better at home tomorrow. That's just my assumption.
I love the Chris Paul play. I tried to manipulate my lineup in so many different ways. I basically had to sacrifice Paul George to start Chris Paul, but I'd love Chris Paul tomorrow. I think if you can get him in your lineup and you can figure out a way you're happy with it, I think he's a terrific play, a terrific bounce back. Like you said, he had a terrible game last game, but I expect Chris Paul to be very aggressive and has been outstanding this entire playoff series before that.
I mean, the last 2 weeks, he hasn't been less than 43 fantasy points and usually in the 50s as well. So you're at $8,700, you're going to get the value that you need. And again, it can't be any worse than last game. He still had 43 fantasy points. So you're pretty safe there with Chris Paul at $8,700. Felt good about that. We talked about Reggie Jackson. I have him in my 2-guard position. We talked about Cameron Johnson. I have him in my small forward. I went a little bit cheap at the power forward position. I went with PJ Tucker there at $3,900. Just a guy to kind of get in there. And again, at that price range, looking for somebody who can get me about 20 plus fantasy points, which PJ Tucker has been able to do. The minutes have been there. They went down the last game, and again, they were blown out. Before that, he hasn't been less than 34 minutes in about 2 weeks as well. So he gets to be out there on the floor. We know he can sometimes hit the corner three. We know he's going to get a few rebounds here and there. Do just enough at that $3,900 price range to get about 20 fantasy points. That's all I'm looking for out of him.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Tucker, he's not, of course, on the offensive juggernaut, but he is one of those guys that kind of stat sheet stuffer. He can get you rebounds. He can get you some steals, even a cheap block here or there. You're just hoping he actually gets up more than 4 or 5 shots, because sometimes he just doesn't shoot the ball at all. But the minutes are definitely there, so I understand the play, because like I said, like you were saying, he's been basically averaging 30 to 35 minutes a game, and he's definitely going to be out there most of the time.
Yeah, and just allows me to make other moves. Now, another bounce back player. You actually kind of mentioned him a little bit. Clint Capella, putting him back in my lineup. $6,400, it's hard for me to ignore the value. That's ultimately what this came down to here, especially a guy who, even when he's not playing well, can still rack up a double-double in any given moment. He racked up a double-double in game 1, had 44 fantasy points in that one. He hasn't been the Clint Capella of the regular season. That much has been for sure, especially throughout this series and this lineup. But again, I'm going with the bounce-back version here with Clint Capella at $6,400 to get me a double-double in this game tomorrow.
Yeah, Clint Capella's been a little bit inconsistent offensively. He's definitely always on the boards. He's always, blocking a shot here or there. I think the key for him to be as productive as you like him to be is that Collins doesn't play as much at the 4 or 5. Because if Gallo's out there and Capella can be the roller versus Collins being the roller, that sets him up to get the points that you're looking for. What he's struggling with a little right now is that he's drawn out on defense with Brook Lopez basically standing behind the 3-point line and can't really get involved as much as he would like to. And then offensively, with Collins kind of filling the lane, he's kind of left to kind of just stand there and hope to get offensive rebound here or there. But you're hoping that Collins, like the first game, Collins wasn't involved in the pick and roll action. There's a lot more Capella. That's what they kind of need for him to get bounce back game you're looking for.
I think there's a good chance you're going to see him bounce back to that again. I kind of expect Atlanta to bounce back a little bit going back at home to begin with on top of it. So I think for some of these players, that'll really portray well for them. Another guy that I didn't expect to go with, but he wound up being a pretty good value here at $4,400, went with Cam Reddish. Came back first game in months and had 17 minutes, 16 fantasy points, 11 points actually on there. I'm going to guess that Cam Reddish might actually get a few more minutes again in this game. And at $4,400, somebody who can get hot, who I think will get you 20 plus fantasy points at home tomorrow.
Yeah, I think Cam Reddish is one of those very much a hit or miss player in a sense, where he got his minutes last game a lot because there was a blowout, and there was talk before the game that McMillan wasn't really sure how much he was going to play him at all, if he's even in a rotation. But with the Jonovich injury, with the game how it's kind of been flowing, I do think they need Cam Reddish to step up. Definitely somebody coming off that bench to kind of be another scorer. So Cam Reddish definitely could be that guy that I think has an awesome chance to take.
Yeah, I'm taking the swing on him as he's going to be that player for me that's going to, if he hits, could be the reason why you win a tournament, because he's going to be that kind of a home run swing value play. I was just impressed that they let him play 17 minutes in that game, regardless of the situation, and that he looked fairly good, fairly sharp on top of it. So I just think he's going to have a little bit of a role, and I'm willing to take that shot here with Cam Reddish at that second guard spot. Keeping on the comeback trail, the bounce back trail. Well, Chris Middleton, $8,800 in that second forward spot. Hopefully, he's going to get you more. When you're paying $8,800, you want him to have a floor of about 40 fantasy points. It's been about 30 and 37 the first 2 games. I think this game, though, he looked a little bit better last game. I think this game we see a bit of a hot streak, Chris Middleton. We know he can get hot at any given moment. I think it's going to be on him in Atlanta, not Giannis so much, for this game for Milwaukee to get the offense going. I'm expecting a bounce-back game out of Chris Middleton in this one.
Yeah, first of all, Chris Middleton really can't play any worse than he has been, especially after the first game. But I also think Milwaukee kind of has this thing going on with their secondary players where one steps up every other game in a sense. So Holiday had his big game last game. I kind of expect that you might be right. Middleton might have his big game this game because it seems how it's kind of worked for Milwaukee the entire offseason. Their postseason, I should say. So I do think Middleton has an excellent opportunity to have a bounce back. And really talk about a guy who's a mismatch. He should be able to light up in a lot of ways. So I think that it's basically him just making his shots, and he'll be right back up there as one of the top DFS scorers.
And he's going to be one of the top-end players that'll actually be a contrarian play, I believe, for most tournaments because of the very streaky play that he's had, especially the first 2 games of this series. So you're going to be a little bit of a contrarian play with one of the higher-up studs in this as well, and I'm expecting a bounce back in that game. Last but not least, another bounce back I'm expecting is DeAndre Ayton. Again, kind of like Clint Capella, $6,900 comes in at a value, and even though he's not playing great, is still a guy who could just fall into a double-double with the way he's utilized in his role and his minutes and all of that. I mean, we're still talking first 3 games here. He hasn't been less than 33 fantasy points, had a ceiling of 48 in the second game. All he's got to do is get you that double-double, which he's always a threat to do. In fact, he should have 3 double-doubles. He missed it by 1 rebound in 2 games in order to get there. I think, again, Phoenix in general bounces back on Monday after that performance. So I expect everybody to play better at home, including DeAndre Ayton at $6,900. That's the value for me.
Yeah, I think DeAndre Ayton needs to get fired up for this game. He was very fired up for the last series versus Gobert, and he basically almost dominated Gobert in a lot of ways. I think maybe he took his time dealing with Zubac in some senses. Maybe after Zubac had such a big game last game, I expect that Ayton should be aggressive and he should come out with, trying to prove that he's still a star, as he keeps talking about in the media, where he, kind of feels like he's undervalued and underappreciated. So I think that you have a great play in that sense where he's got his back against the wall, he's got a little chip on his shoulder. The little key for him usually, though, is with Chris Paul and Booker when they're both out there, sometimes they take too many shots for him to get involved as you'd like him offensively. But as you pointed out, he's a rebounding machine. He should be a lot more dominant, I think, defensively this game as well. I think that you can get maybe 3 or 4 blocks in this game, which might actually, be really productive and big for you DFS-wise.
And he should be getting a lot more offensive rebounds as well, putting in some points.
Well, Zubac shouldn't be having getting 16 rebounds against him.
Exactly.
That's where you're going to see Ayton should have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and needs to prove you're good against the star players, great. Also, you need to be good against the guys who are just average players in a sense.
100% agree. So those are our lineups. Hopefully find some good analysis from that. Make sure you're joining the free DC's DFS Challenge Tournament, the last one.
Last week, guys, come on, get in there.
And no one's beaten the host so far. So you will actually have a very good chance. If you're able to win tonight, you will actually have a very good chance to walk away with the championship football from Mr. on right after the commercial. So make sure you guys stay tuned to the DC's DFS Challenge Tournament here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network at WWSRN, also presented to you by Belly Up Sports.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama, There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply STOP to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her?
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge?
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! It's now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend?
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
This is you over 30 years ago.
Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
And this is your mom when you drive her back from therapy.
Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
Roles change without us noticing, and in your new role, we help you help. AARP gives you the information to help care for your mom so that you can have patience with her, just like she did with you. Visit aarp.org/caregiving or call 1-877-333-5885 to get practical health and wellness tips to provide even better care for your loved one.
Are we there yet?
Remember, visit aarp.org/caregiving. AARP, we help you help. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. This is DC's DFS Challenge on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Hi, this is Terry.
Heyo, and welcome back into the DC's DFS Challenge on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network, WWSRN, also presented to you by Belly Up Sports. We just went over our DraftKings lineup cards for the last time this year, Chris and I. But joining the show now is Mr. Chaz Filardi, who you could possibly win the championship football from if you actually are able to beat the host in the last week of June. Chaz, how you doing today?
How much does that contest cost again?
Zero.
Zero. Free. Free, the best word in the world.
I usually take advantage of free things.
Absolutely. Everybody should. What have you been taking advantage of besides that this weekend so far, Chaz?
Well, it's a weird Saturday night, right? There's the Padres are playing good baseball. San Francisco's the bomb. That's the only 2 games left. And then the hockey's already, boy, a future bet on Montreal would have been a nice thing, huh? Who would have thought? We talk a lot of hockey on our show, and there was no way. Both guys said, not 1, 2. There's no way Montreal's beating them, and they beat them. So, you know what? They played the games for a reason, no matter what the number. I tell people, just because it says minus 370 in front of and it could be a UFC fighter, it could be DeGrom, it could be, a team without the points in football or basketball. Bottom line is minus 370s are supposed to win. But if they did every time, Vegas wouldn't have all those lights.
That's right. That's why it's called gambling, because anything can happen at the end of the day. But we try to teach you how to be smarter gamblers along the way as well. Speaking of bounce backs, Chris, I'm looking at the updated score right now. It looks like Phoenix is trying to come out strong anyway, 39-26 as we get midway through the second quarter in LA at the moment.
Yeah, I heard the Clippers are 3 for 13 from 3-point line right now, so they're not shooting the ball so well. Maybe Pandemic P's not showing up like you want him to.
I will say right now, though, it's plus 6.5 on the Clippers side. If you want to do a live bet, I'd be kind of interested in that because I don't think this is going to wind up being a blowout. So plus 6.5 right now, I'll be able to jump on that for the Clippers. Something I kind of would be interested in, just to throw that out there while that game's going on at the moment.
I personally have had some situations where I looked at that same stat, because I look at team stats, Chris, and I'm looking and they're shooting terrible, so they got to get better. So I bet the over, and then they never got better. That's another part of gambling. Sometimes they don't do what you think they're gonna do.
Yeah, the over/under right now is sitting at 202, as we got a lower scoring game right now for this one. Man, I might be a little interested in actually putting some action on that myself too, on hitting that over, because I do think this thing opens up in the second half.
What do you think about that, Chaz? You think you would go in over for this game? It's kind of low scoring for these two teams.
At this point in time, I would not. I would let the 5 minutes run and look at it at halftime again, and then I guess I will, because I'll be on the air with you guys. So we'll talk 5 minutes. Now, 5 minutes of basketball time in the first half is not that long. 5 minutes of basketball time in the second half at the end of the game, amazing a long time.
Yes, it is.
For 5 minutes of NBA basketball, you'll be blue.
So many fouls, to stop that clock. It's actually dropping now to 199, so getting better and better odds. So maybe holding off for now until you can. So that's what's going on live at the moment. For tomorrow, we do have the Atlanta game, the Bucks game. Right now, Atlanta at home underdogs +4. I'm smashing that. I'm smashing them at home at +4 right now.
My son told me there's no way anybody beats Milwaukee. He said that right before they got beat. I think then they get beat. Well, he looked like Nostradamus the second game. So those are tough. When it gets down to the very last series, that's the beauty of championshipfootballs.com. I never have to stress on betting the championship game or the Super Bowl for football, because my mind is on who's going to win and getting the footballs ready. So it works out real well. When there's the last 4 teams are left, the final 4 of any playoffs, it's tough. And sometimes that in-line action, like you said, hopping on and under, an over 199 when it was like 220, wasn't it, to start the game?
Yeah.
That's what you got to do sometimes. But there's nothing wrong with watching these games and enjoying it. There's plenty of stuff to bet on
while it's going on. Yeah, absolutely. The way this playoffs have gone, especially with Atlanta in particular, when it looks like they shouldn't win another game, they find a way to make an adjustment, or at least enough of an adjustment the following game. Milwaukee has been, in my opinion, incredibly inconsistent ever since the Miami series. So that's why I'm looking at this game and I'm saying, you know what, this lines up where Atlanta's going to be 4-point underdogs. Give me the points. What do you think, Chris?
So I want to say Milwaukee's going to win, but to your point, I feel like I've been against Atlanta every series so far, and I've basically expected them to get swept the last series or losing 5. So I'm going to probably abstain from this one, because I just feel like my heart says Milwaukee, but it doesn't matter. It seems to, because Atlanta just seems to pull the rabbit out of their butt every once in a while, somehow, some way, and keeps advancing. So as Chaz kind of pointed out, when you get to those final couple of teams, it gets a little bit more difficult to pick. I look for the over in that game. Is there, the
over-under on that game is set at 224 at the moment.
I bet on the over on that game.
I would too. I was certain, especially the way these two teams are playing.
Chris wasn't the only one, never given Atlanta their due. They haven't been a favorite in their last 10 games. They've gotten every single game. They got a lot of double. 1, 2, 3, 4. They've won 6 of 10. Gotten points every single time. Points at home, man, that's a lot. Points at home.
And it's because the matchup. You look at these teams on paper. Atlanta should not be able to hang with Milwaukee because they shouldn't be able to defend Milwaukee. But Milwaukee has been incredibly inconsistent offensively. On top of Atlanta playing better defense, I think most people expected them to be able to do so.
I think it's been a big part of it. And I also think Milwaukee hasn't been as good defensive as a team as they have been historically the last couple of years either. So you see it. That's why I go with the over in this game, because I do feel like Atlanta hasn't really been stopped. Trae Young kind of shot poorly last game, but Milwaukee hasn't really played great defense at all this postseason.
No, Clippers game now moving up to plus 9.5 as the Phoenix Suns have a 44-29 lead now, and the over/under dropping to 196.5 at the moment as well. So just kind of keeping an eye on that as we get closer and closer to halftime.
I would jump on the over in that game in the second half. Second half, Chaz to comment on it because I think it's a second half definitely to bet on. And that's
but I'm watching, and Kawhi Leonard, having him on a team makes the team a little bit better than when he's.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I'm not quite sure. I just and Paul George has had some good moments. He really has, but Kawhi Leonard every single time. There's no picking and choosing when he plays. He plays good every single time.
It's very true.
I tell you what, who's been stepping up, and you got to give him some due, is Trae Young. He's been stepping up these playoffs, especially this series in particular. There's nothing he's not doing at the moment. Impressive. I know Chris hates him, but there's nothing he's not doing at the moment.
Impressive,
Yes, he's been impressive. Trap him. Trap him. That's all I have to say. Trap him and see what happens.
They had talked about that. I saw in the news they had talked about, the loss was on me. Well, part of the issue is he's been more than 20% of the team when he's out there. He's picking up a third of the activity. He's hustling, he's shooting, he's playing, he's just doing really, really well.
Well, he's playing more like a true point guard, not just a scorer.
And
that's what's been coming down to. He's learning how to distribute all of a sudden on a more efficient level.
He has been, and when his shot's not falling, he tries to continue to be aggressive at the free throw line and try to get other guys involved. I do think he can shoot you out of a game as much as he can put you in a game. He reminds me of a longer range AI in a lot of ways. Like, I was never as big as AI fan as a lot of people were. I give him credit for being a hell of a competitor, but I also think he could lose games as much as he can win games for you. And Trae Young kind of reminds me the same way. Now Trae Young's been on a great run. AI had that great run to beat the Lakers, get to the finals that one year. Not to beat the Lakers, but to get to the finals, play the Lakers. But I do think Trae Young's kind of on a similar path right now where he's doing a little bit of everything, and the team kind of revolves around him. They are playing well with him.
Yeah, like you said, he's got a much longer range.
Never a shot that Iverson didn't like, ever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Trae Young's not far behind.
Funny.
He does have a longer range, though. Is the one that makes him a little bit more dangerous in that sense, though. Hey, Chaz, what you've been looking at in your baseball bets for tomorrow? I know you mentioned the Giants and the Padres tonight, but you got anything lined up for tomorrow?
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about is when things are going well, and I think today we had Houston early, and it was a seven inning game because they got rained out yesterday, and they did nothing for us. But we haven't had a loser since. We had a couple parlays. We had St. Louis in the under in that one, and we had Toronto in the over in that one. We had Texas. We had Atlanta team total under. We had the Mets. That was a squeaker. They walked it off. We're sitting with the Dodgers. We got the Dodgers. They're 2-2. We got the Cubs team total under, which is, I think, 3.5 or maybe even 4.5. So that's looking good. And so we're doing real well with the baseball, but that's the beauty of it. If you win Friday, when you wake up Saturday, okay, you got a pretty good idea what you're doing because it ain't broke. You don't fix it. But you still got to go through the easy sports data because you got the new pitchers, and pitchers will change things. But when it comes to what the team is doing in terms of whether they're not scoring, like Atlanta's not scoring, St. Louis is not scoring. Today, St. Louis is not scoring, but they're playing a team who's not scoring more, which is kind of like you're double negative there. They're not scoring more. And so it was, I won a bet where I had the team total under for the winning team, which is kind of weird. You don't think about that. I think the team's going to win, but I like the under, and I don't think they're going to score a lot of points. So it was really what we call an all bet. It was a 6betsagame.com special where you bet under team totals for both teams, under for the game, and then I added St. Louis, and I had them on the money line as well as on the run line. So it just was a 3-1 win when you're betting baseball. It's a pretty good win because I had the team total under, so I hit every one, but 3-1, you're covering the run line too. And most times you got to have the run line nowadays. These lines are crazy. I mean, I'm betting 3-teamers with my chalk. I go through all these plays from the EasySportsData.com program, and I'll pick what I think are the best teams, and they're always the big favorites. So you got to use the run line because when I do the money line, $5 gets me like $1.
Right, exactly. It's not worth it at that point.
I'm not doing that. That ain't happening.
No, I'm 100% with you. You have another new show. I always had Sports Betting Weekly on Thursday, which is live betting, and you can always cash tickets immediately. But now you got a show coming out on Wednesday afternoons to kind of break down the easy sports data.
And that's very similar, guys, to what we're talking about right now with, you know what? Well, it's not going to be picks. And remember, Thursday's show is live action because normally we would not be on the air. We went full time. We usually just talk football. There's plenty of talk about Thursday for football between college and the pro. And of course, the game is on when we're on the air. So that works out well. But with this show that we're doing, we're basically going to be looking at the data and telling people what's happening. So you could really benefit from it as well, but it isn't as time sensitive. So, I tell people all the time, listen, if you don't want to watch a show on Thursday, that's none of my business. I don't really care. All I can do is give out winners. If you don't want them, you don't want them. You know what? God bless you. You're a better handicapper than we are, but we cash tickets. I mean, we cashed a ticket this week on a team that was getting no hit. It was a no hitter. Our team was losing. They were getting no hit. We won because we're getting a half a run. It was 0-0. It was the first 5 innings. So I thought, how do you win with no? But we had another great show. And of course, we're cashing tickets on the show, but some weeks, not as many. This week we did really good. I had a couple of hockey bets. We hit we waited until about 10 minutes in. It was still nothing in the first period. We hit 0.5 and 1.5, and they scored both goals. And we always set it up so as long as you get that first live play, you're good. So if it's an over that I'm playing in live action for the basketball game, I'm going to go pretty high with one. I'm going to take whatever. They normally give you like 5 or 6, right? So say we'll use the 200 because that's about where it was. Say they go 205, it's plus 327, and 189 is minus 400. I'm going to go somewhere, about minus 200 for a big play. And if I win that, I'm going to bet what I would win on the risk on the bigger one. So as long as I hit the first one, I'm good. I get my money back. I play again. That's why they call it gambling. But when the second comes in at plus 367 or plus 297, whatever that number is, that's like hitting a parlay with that second play.
Yeah. Which I was going to say, I really like how you kind of talked about the stats that, it doesn't matter you watch Thursday or when you watch, you just get the numbers. I know for myself this year, baseball's been something I can't stay on top of necessarily day in, day out. And so sometimes I kind of fall behind on who's pitching or what the matchups are. And I kind of go with my gut of historically this team's better or this team's better. So I like the fact that your easy sports data kind of helps keep people, their thumb on the pulse in a sense without having to watch from day to day.
Right. I will get off the show and I will have to create the results for today, which will include, of course, the first 5 inning lines, the results, who's the starting pitcher. All we care about is a starting pitcher. If you're on the mound, again, we talked about that previously. Some of these pitchers now on those weird days where they're using the bullpen, they'll go, an inning and a half. They made a rule, right? They changed the rule. You got to pitch with at least 3 guys. So, yeah. But what happens is the data just jumps right off the page at you. You see teams aren't scoring. And I just keep betting Atlanta's team total under. They're winning games, and I'm betting their team total under, and I'm cashing. Same thing with St. Louis. So that's the kind of stuff that the Wednesday show will bring. Don't get me wrong. It is designed for you to give us money so you get the data too. And then you learn how to read it together, or you follow us because we talk about a lot of the things on the show. It really doesn't take much when you see a team doing the same thing on the road that they're doing at home. When a team's doing it wherever they're doing it, and Houston was like that. Houston was I mean, they cost me a couple bucks today, but I can't complain because they were treating me very, very well for the last 10 days or so. And that's what'll happen. You listen to the show on Wednesday, or you watch the show on Wednesday. It's not live. It's a recording, but we're covering the data, and it's the real data we're talking about. So if we say the Cubs aren't scoring, well, you can bet the Cubs team total under, because you just look and see. You could watch the show on Friday, right? And look at the box scores and say, hey, what he said is still true, because it could be. Some teams, look at Arizona. They haven't won a road game, I don't know, in a long, long time. Yeah. Don't worry about the odds. The odds are only relevant to if you lose. I don't care if they're minus 1,700. If they lose 29 in a row, you're going to do okay if they lose one at minus 1,700, because you don't need to win a lot of plays when a team is losing, you don't need to. You just keep it small and next, you could let it ride. Wes on our show, he likes to do that. He likes to let it ride. So where I do the open parlays, and they're getting tricky. Like they won't let you open parlay these 7-inning doubleheaders.
Okay.
Even if you do like the first game and then you try to fill it with the second game, they say, nah. And that's part of that house advantage. The house advantage is really, hey, that's not in our best interest, so you can't do it. Oh, crap is that?
If only we could have a fair sports book out there. Maybe one day we'll be able to create one. Who knows? At the half, Phoenix Suns 50, Clippers 36 as we head into the second half there. So it'll be real interesting opening up in that game. Chaz, you mentioned that, on Thursdays especially, we'll be talking a lot of football. I'm glad you mentioned that because this show will be becoming the MD's Fantasy Football Show at the start of the football season. So we'll still be here on Saturday nights at 9:30 on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network, still being presented by Belly Up Sports, but it will be the MD's Fantasy Football Show, DFS DraftKings lineups for football and our football bets, of course. The reason that's changed is because we won't be covering basketball next year. It will end at the end of football season there, but it will be in addition to the MD's Fantasy Football Show. So it'll be 5 days a week, or 5 episodes a week, I should say, for that show. You're going to see Chris and I all throughout the week on that one. You also catch him on Belly Up Fantasy Live at 8:30 on Tuesdays as well. So we'll be busy beavers throughout the football season.
Yeah, that football Saturday show is great because not only is it fun, but like the games are right, like they're kicking off the Oregon games and the USC games, sometimes state games, and there's still a lot of football left when you're talking.
And you still have all the NFL games that we get to talk about the next day too. So Saturday shows and football season are jam-packed. In fact, we have a hard time actually keeping it to just an hour of content with those. So we'll be doing that, though, next year again. So this show will be coming the MD's Fantasy Football Show. The tournament will still be there. We'll still be doing – Chaz will still be graciously giving us championship footballs to give away each month for drawings. You'll still have to beat the hosts. That's still going to be the trick. But they will still be there. We're going to break down everything we possibly can to help win you guys some money. Another thing going on – go ahead, Chaz.
Well, I would say we talked about it. So let me look at this because I'm looking at this halftime line. I'm looking at the halftime stats, and the problem is so many of these games have been tales of two halves. Teams have been up big like this all year. It's been like that from one quarter to another. But in the playoffs, where the defense, as you guys have told me, the defense really did kick it up a notch with these NBA playoffs. But it's so hard to put your money on a team that just stunk that bad for what 24 minutes.
24 minutes.
24 minutes. The Clippers just stunk real bad. Now they're given 3.5. So the over-under is 110, which is kind of confusing because the line is minus 110. So, boy, if you're new to sports betting, that's probably a pretty complicated little 110 thing.
Why are they both 110? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing. The one that jumps out at me is, what do you think is going to happen? So I'll start with Chris. Chris, what do you think is going to happen in the second half?
I think ultimately the Suns will win, but I think the Clippers are going to come out on a run. That's why I think the score is going to be higher. Like I think it's going to be a higher scoring second half than the first half. I think that the teams are kind of feeling out each other, and I think Clippers can't really shoot much more poorly than they have been in a lot of senses. So I expect the Clippers to kind of come out in the third quarter, have a run, keep it close in the fourth quarter. Ultimately, Phoenix should win, but I think it's going to get much closer.
They are 13 of 44.
Yeah, exactly.
30%. It's 29.5.
It's hard to be much worse. I think you're also going to see the Clippers come out and play a lot of small ball in the second half. They're going to really open things up, which is just going to be a lot of the points to go both ways, frankly, too.
To me, the key to the NBA, when a team shoots that poorly and they're still within striking distance, that's usually when they still come back and make it a game. Because if they're shooting that poorly and they're not getting blown up by 20 or 30 points at the halftime, you usually see the second half is much closer.
And they make no mistake, 14 points is very much within striking distance.
Oh my God, it's a run. It's a run. You're absolutely
especially
right.
Suns only have 50. Suns only have 50 points. That's where I think overall the games has been lower scoring. I think that favors the Clippers in a lot of ways.
So I'm looking at the team totals, and the Clippers are 56.5, and the Suns are 53.5. I think I'm gonna watch. I may, we'll see. We've still got 11 minutes. It'll probably tip off before we are off the air, but I think I'm going to watch. But if I was doing anything, I'd be leaning on the over 53.5. Like you said, the Suns, we'll talk about how the Clippers are shooting. The Suns only got 50 points. 50 points isn't great.
No.
They only had 21 points in the second quarter. So if I was leaning anything right now, I think I'd be leaning over 53.5 for the Suns, because if the Clippers do make a run, the Suns are going to have to keep up with them. And 53.5, the Suns should do that. They should do that every half. So we'll see what happens. I may have talked myself into it, actually. I think I did. Never mind.
Yeah, I'm definitely on board with that bet, Chaz.
Yeah, I'm going in.
There you go. Well, while you're punching in that ticket, the other thing going on this summer that I want you guys to be all aware of is the second annual Belly Up Charity Bowl tournament with Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation. We are trying to raise money in the fight against childhood cancer. Basically, all you got to do is go to BellyUpFantasySports.com, hit the tab for the Belly Up Bowl, and you can sign up, fill out the sheets. We're going to take 204 teams. It's going to be across 17 leagues. $20 entry fee. Off that $20, you'll be able to compete for a first place prize of $1,200, a second place prize of $400. If you win the league, you'll win your entry fee back. But this will allow us to make over a $2,000 donation to the Alex Lemonade Stand Foundation, along with playing against some of the best analysts out there in a best ball tournament, which is always a lot of fun because all you have to do is draft, and then that's it. You don't have to have any more of a commitment. So this will not take much of your time, and it's for a great cause as well.
That is
very excited to keep that going.
No doubt about that.
Yeah.
So now, Chris, we're looking at, depending on how this game goes, we got the Monday game because I'll be part of the DC's DFS Challenge tournament, the Monday game between Phoenix and the Clippers. That game will be back in Phoenix. Does the lid come off? Because we had the lid in the second half. I'm the lid in the first half. Most of these games in the first half, I felt like, though, so far tend to be lower scoring anyway. But does the lid come off a little bit when they go to Phoenix?
I think so, because I think Chris Paul has to kind of get back in his little groove, and I think once the Suns start scoring, I think that you'll see them kind of start flowing more. One thing I think about the NBA is, just like hitting can be contagious in baseball, I think shooting can be contagious in basketball. When teams both shoot poorly or scoring, it seems like they both just can't do anything. But once one team gets hot, the other team seems to kind of match it. So that's why, like I said, I think the second half is going to be high scoring. I wouldn't be surprised if the next game against Phoenix, and the Suns are more smoother and still continue to adjust, Devin Booker gets used to wearing that mask. I think that they're going to have to score more points, and I think the Clippers will kind of keep up with them as accordingly.
The Milwaukee Bucks, they should win this series. They should win this. I still had him in 6. I still had him in 6. I'm still going to have them in 6. But man, I tell you what, there's a lot of outside distractions for the Milwaukee Bucks right now, because all anybody could talk about is that if Atlanta wins this series, who the next coach is going to be. I mean, that conversation is already getting brought up, even though the series is tied at 1 apiece.
Well, first of all, we have to give Nate McMillan incredible credit for Atlanta just making this run as it is. I mean, This is a team that fired their coach midway through the season because they were struggling. Nate McMillan's basically taken them over and got them here right now. So I think he actually has to get a lot of kudos for where he is. And there's a lot of talks about he won't actually remain the coach of Atlanta next year, even though Atlanta wants him to be. He's thinking about looking for something else, possibly up higher in the organization. But having said that, I think that there's a lot of distractions. But we've heard this from out of Milwaukee the last couple of years. They're expected to win for 2 or 3 years now, and every time they come up short, everybody has to have their scapegoat in a sense. The Holiday trade's a big trade. They made a big move, so I think they expect the kind of the payoff. But I also think that if they were to lose with Atlanta, there's a lot of teams that lost Atlanta in this postseason. They were supposed to beat them, so it's going to be kind of interesting to see how that would play out.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting as well. I think it's interesting that Jason Kidd took over the coaching job in Dallas. No more Rick Carlisle there. I think it's interesting that Chauncey Billups taking over the Portland job. You got any opinions on those two?
First of all, I think Dallas is going to miss Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle is a hell of a coach. I mean, everywhere he's gone, he's won. And he's been able to take teams with lesser talent and keep them competitive year in, year out. Dallas isn't really loaded. So I'm kind of curious to see what Jason Kidd does. He's kind of flamed out the last 2 stops he's had. He did an okay job with the Nets. Didn't do such a great job after that. He got kind of rode the coattails of Lakers last year, and because they want a ring, he's got an opportunity to kind of get back into the coaching again. I'm kind of curious to see, is he actually the answer in Dallas? Chauncey Billups, I'm I have no idea how to evaluate that move. I'm excited he gets the opportunity. I'm glad it's not the same old retreads guys, but I also don't know what Chauncey Billups really knows about when it comes to coaching. I get to listen to him, comment at halftime, stuff like that. I always necessarily agree with him, but I think that maybe it'll be kind of interesting to see how he kind of runs a team. I do think that it's important that somebody Dame Lillard wanted. So that part to me is probably the most important thing about him getting the job is that Dame wanted it, Dame willing to stay if they get a great coach, then I think that was a good move.
I think it's a big reason why they went Chauncey over Mike D'Antoni, who apparently, the brass at least really liked what the Mike D'Antoni had to say for that team. But again, going with Billups, to your point, to make Damian Lillard happy, I think is very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you got to keep the superstar there and you got to keep them happy. I think that's the most important. And I think Terry Stotts isn't a bad coach either. I think he got kind of a raw deal in Portland. That team wasn't super loaded in talent. They have two good two-blood players in the backcourt. Nurkic is a pretty good center, but that's about it. So I think
Nurkic never healthy either, so it's not like you always have him available.
And Terry Stotts has been a winner where he's gone too. He reminds me a lot of Rick Carlisle in a lot of ways, where every time he goes somewhere, he can basically makes them competitive and keeps them afloat. Portland shouldn't ever been considered a true contender the last couple of years, and somehow they keep acting like they should get better and better, and I don't understand why, because other than Demon, like CJ, like I said, that team really hasn't upgraded a whole lot of talent-wise the last few years. So just because they made a nice run a couple of years ago doesn't guarantee you're going to continue to make that run if you don't add better players.
No, completely agree. Again, I just want to reiterate, click the link in the comments below, wherever you're watching us on social media, at Belly Up Fantasy, at WWSRN. It's a free tournament, and it's the last chance until September to try to win a championship football from this man, Mr. Chaz Filardi. Chaz, what are you scoping out right now? I can see the calculating. I can see the steam coming out of the head.
Chavez Ravine, it is 2-2. I have the Dodgers, so I just need a walk-off. I'll take a 2-run blast if they're going to give it to me, but I'll take the W. But one thing I wanted to mention about the coaching carousel, and Chris mentioned, nope, never mind. You know what? When you're at the game, you know right away when it's an out, but when you're watching on TV and he swings hard, you never know. But one of the things he mentioned is the coaching carousel. And I love so many times you see the desperate move by a GM who hired the guy to begin with, right? Letting that guy go with really no repercussions on his end because, the bottom line is you hired him. Now you have to fire him to save your butt. And then eventually, because it really does take an awful lot for a GM to get canned. They can go through 3 or 4 coaches at some point in time.
Especially in the NBA.
Yeah. How about David Griffin?
Yeah,
because this guy's turning through coaches in Cleveland and New Orleans like they're like it's cereal he's pick it out each morning. It's incredible.
Yeah, especially in the NBA. Now the NFL doesn't really work that way. I guess baseball is hard to get the GM fired too. I guess, but I feel like the NBA is the most difficult one where they just seem to outlast these coaches much more than the other sports do.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Of course, in baseball, with half of it being analytics, there's almost a question: do you even need a manager with the way they actually style it in baseball? Which makes the Easy Sports data all that much more valuable because it does become more predictive in that sense to be able to help you guys win money.
Playing Moneyball for 7 years.
That's right.
It really is what it is. I'm just playing to the numbers. And don't get me wrong. Sometimes it doesn't work. But the bottom line is numbers have no emotions. Moneyball is not about, the money itself, really. It's just about if you can find the data that says, hey, why pay this when I could for half get this? And you're getting like 80%. So for half the money, I'm getting like 80% of the production because, again, things like walks and on-base percentage. I've watched a lot of baseball this summer. A pitcher who starts early and has men on base and has those, difficult innings. They have a term for them. There it is. That one ain't in the yard. We are see you in LA.
There you go.
Chaz always pulling off the magic.
Bellinger had a nice run. I did that one. I know how I knew. The first one I couldn't tell because they cut right to the ball, but it looked like a good swing. This one, Bellinger didn't move. You know what? Tatis, you saw Tatis.
But I know.
Tatis hit that home run the other night. I think it was the second one. Might have been the third one. I don't know. He had 3 in a row. But they didn't move. Didn't move. And it really wasn't that far out. But that was a nice win for me because now I am live in a few parlays. because I had the Dodgers. I had them in some. I think I got them in open parlays as well. So I'll take the W. And that's the thing. It's a team that's a big favorite like them shouldn't win 3-2 in the bottom of the ninth. But you know what? Sure beats tearing up the tickets. That's
absolutely 100%.
Can I ask Chad a question real quick before we move on? Chad, this might be the last time we talk to you about baseball because we're moving on to more football moving forward in the show. But do you think there's anything that you think has to be changed for baseball to be more watchable in a lot of ways or improve the game?
I know one. Robot umpires. If I could, Chris, I would create an army of robot umpires because I just see horrible calls, just horrible calls. And it's mostly strikes and balls, and there's just no reason for it with the technology. But then again, how do you measure a first down in the NFL, right? You get out of 2 sticks and a chain. What the hell am I missing there? So that would be the first one. Baseball is it's so funny because remember with the steroids, it was great for everybody. Yeah, but the guys are cheating. Well, you don't know how their livers are going to be, But there's a lot of guys that are going to regret taking those steroids a few years. And they're getting probably right now is when these guys are going to start having some serious health issues. But it's so much exciting. Baseball is horrible. I mean, I watch baseball, but I hardly ever really watch it. The Padres are pretty exciting, but I'm bouncing around and I'll have the game recorded so I can, and I'll have my phone. If they score, then I'll go back and see how they scored. I'll watch the play. Baseball's boring. It's just boring. I sit around waiting for football all month of July.
Yeah, us too, as you can tell. Before we close out the show, Chaz, what's coming up with you this week? Just run it down for everybody again.
Well, we're doing the Sports Betting Weekly, sponsored by EasySportsData.com, and we're really excited about getting the data out there. And again, we're going to have it up on Belly Up Fantasy, and it's just a matter of coming up with the cheat sheet. But the show's starting to come together. So the first couple episodes, we had some issues, and that's mostly because you give me a board and buttons. It doesn't mean I know what I'm doing. But we had a really good show last Tuesday. I just forgot to hit the record button, and it was so good that I said it was a sign from the Lord. I've been doing this a long time. So, when we were on the radio, I used to do some recordings, and I would play them because we were on Saturday morning, 8 o'clock, which in San Diego, if you're a young guy, you're not going to be up Saturday morning, 8 o'clock. So we would record some stuff through the week, and I did that. I had a nice 20-minute phone call with a guy, and I never hit record. So we're looking forward to that show, and mostly what we're looking forward to for that show is to get people to embrace the fact that I cash tickets every single day. I mean, I had a loser. I've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 in a row now since that first loser. Don't get me wrong. That loser changed my day because I had an attitude. I hate losing. I hate losing. I really do. I hate losing.
So we have that to look forward to. And then Chris and I will be back next Friday, 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. We're continuing our team profile series with that one. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. We'll have some clips from our last show that just came out yesterday for you guys to enjoy. But make sure you're checking out all the MD's Fantasy Football Show content by subscribing to iTunes, iHeart, YouTube, pretty much anywhere you could possibly go, or watching us on social media and connecting with us on social media at BellyUpMDFF Show. Get us on. We get you on the mailbag if you have any questions for us. We're gonna get you all set up. We're getting closer to the season. My first set of rankings, I should say, are almost done. We'll be up on the website pretty soon, and we'll be getting that going and getting you guys ready for your drafts because it's right around the corner at this point. So look to check us out again next Friday from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. Signing off for the last time, the DC's DFS Challenge Show. We'll see you guys come September for the next Saturday night show. As Chaz, you always like to say,
always be cashing.
See you guys next time.